What's going on, and welcome to the MLB DFS Q&A. My name is Tom Vecchio. I'm here for the next half hour to take your questions about tonight's MLB slate. Quick programming note, this is the last show for me. Jim Sanas will be back tomorrow for the solo shot and not at 9 a.m. on the FanDuel YouTube page, and then he will be back for the rest of the season covering the MLB DFS slate here every day at 4 p.m., taking your questions. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at DFS_Tom. You can catch me all over the pages on numberFire.com, writing about all four sports, podcasts, etc., etc. So hopping into tonight's slate, should be a good one. We are looking at some very, very strong offenses, all in good spots. Starting off, we have some good lineups. We have some weather to get to. The weather on tonight's slate is, I want to say, centered around this Milwaukee at Chicago Cubs game, as I spoke about on the solo shot this morning. We got some wind in some games. The Detroit-Baltimore game is looking as it did last night, where we're going to get some rain early in the game or prior to the game, which could be a delayed start. But as the night goes on, it should become more clear and allow them to play, assuming a late start there. The problem with the Cubs and the Brewers game, it's the opposite, where it's actually starting off very clear. And then as the game goes on, this is where it becomes a major, major issue, combined with the fact that we've seen the wind jump up to 18 miles per hour blowing out in the outfield. So this now presents a higher risk for pitchers, including Corbin Burnes. Now, as we've seen some of the weather change combined with when the rain might be coming, we can make the case that Kevin Gausman is actually now the starting pitch or the top pitcher on tonight's slate, given the rain issue or the rain and the wind potential in Chicago, and the fact that we do see Corbin Burnes more expensive. So if we don't have an update prior to lock, if we don't know if there's going to be delayed start or whatnot, I think I might just be siding with Kevin Gausman simply due to the safety over Corbin Burnes tonight, although I do think Burnes is the better pitcher. Starting off, Brandon on YouTube is asking Austin Hayes or Santander tonight. I actually wrote up Austin Hayes as a home run prop call tonight. Just like this spot so much for some of the righties on the Orioles going up against Skubal, who this season is allowing 2.39 home runs per 9 to right-handed hitters. He's got a 4.52 xFIP. Obviously, that's terrible. 47% fly ball rate to righties and a 39.4% fly ball rate to righties as well. Look at Austin Hayes, plenty of power from him. So the answer for me is Austin Hayes. I wrote him up today, hoping we get that home run prop call correctly. I did mention that I have a bit of interest in Skubal tonight when it comes to his potential strikeout upside. It's not like we're looking at the Orioles as like an amazing offense, where he's got some decent strikeout upside. Overall, Skubal isn't that expensive. He comes in at $8,600. So I'm fully going to an Orioles stack tonight. I will have some exposure to them, but I'm also want to do a little bit of a sprinkle of Skubal into a few tournament lineups. Based on games, what game should I avoid today based on the weather is what Savan on YouTube is asking. As of now, it's looking like this Milwaukee-Chicago game is looking like a major, major concern where, let's say there was no rain. Like, let's just say we were free of rain, but 18-mile-per-hour wind blowing out is an issue for, obviously, any pitcher. Now, that obviously presents a massive upside for the hitters, which is why we've seen the Brewers, their implied total jump up over 6 tonight. Now, I think we'd be targeting the Brewers tonight against Jake Arrieta, even there was 8-mile-per-hour wind instead of 18. Arrieta's not having a good season. He's allowing too many home runs. So the Brewers and the Cubs game is the only one I would really avoid due to the weather. That's really the only issue. Like, a little bit of rain for this is not going to be an issue. Like, I see this, potential red spot for Cleveland and Oakland, but, a slight delay in game should be an issue. I'm still looking to stack hitters in this Baltimore-Detroit game. As the night goes on, we should be seeing plenty of clear skies. So really just waiting on an update on this Milwaukee-Chicago game. Again, I would be, potentially willing to remove Corbin Burnes from my player pool if we don't get an update, because it's simply $11,000, simply too much to tie up in a game that could be delayed. They could get to the 4th inning and he could be pitching great and the rain starts and then they just call the game and, it's 4 innings. You're not getting anything out of him there. DJ saying Cleveland does have weather issues too. Yes, it shouldn't be too much. That could just be a spot that is an in-game delay, and then it's fine as the night goes on. But I am aware of that. CL Smooth on YouTube is saying, what about the Texas game versus Seattle Mariners? So I actually mentioned Tyler Anderson this morning at the tail end of the solo shot as a pitcher I'm considering tonight. Now, we look to Anderson's numbers overall. Like, he's not a big strikeout pitcher. We get that, right? He's allowing a few too many home runs. He does keep the walks down, which is good. He's mainly a fly ball pitcher, which isn't great, but a lot of medium contact, not a lot of hard contact, which is good to see. Now we flip to Texas, and yes, they don't strike out a whole lot with their current roster versus lefties. Okay, I get that. Not a big strikeout upside for Tyler Anderson tonight. But look at this. A 118 team ISO versus lefties, 29th in the league, is absolutely terrible. We look to their WRC plus 77 versus lefties. I mean, that is horrible. So, yes, Tyler Anderson is a pitcher that I'm considering in this game going up against the Rangers. And I also think that attacking Spencer Howard with some of the power bats from Seattle isn't the worst choice in the world if you're looking to be a little bit different in tournaments. Mike is asking, who would be your best to pick for tonight? A pitcher, hitter, overall the best pitcher on tonight's slate, given the weather concerns, would be Kevin Gausman at 10.3. In terms of hitting options tonight, it's all about Toronto, getting up to a potential Toronto stack. And then, of course, Milwaukee, if that game does play. Jerry on Facebook is saying, my favorite stack is SF, LA Dodgers, St. Louis. What are your thoughts? Totally on board with St. Louis. I spoke about them this morning on the solo shot. I think that they're in a phenomenal spot going up against Will Crow. Their lineup is confirmed. We got confirmed a little bit earlier, if I remember. Braves, Rays, Pirates, Cardinals. Yeah. So Carlson, Goldschmidt, Arenado, O'Neill. Those are the main four I would stack. Then Harrison Bader actually has some good pop in the sixth spot. So I'm fully on board with the Cardinals tonight. SF I kind of like as a sneaky spot. I don't think a lot of people are going to be on SF tonight. They're down here with a 4.59 implied run total. Like, they're going up against Merrill Kelly, who is just like a really average pitcher overall. Like, I don't think he's a terrible pitcher, but by no means do I think he's good. And I think that some of the home run upside for San Fran, who's obviously one of the best teams, if not the best team in the league, is going to be undervalued tonight. Like 1.57 home runs per nine versus righties. Versus some of those hitters in that lineup. I specifically wrote about Chris Bryant tonight. He could be a solid option. And, of course, the Dodgers always have plenty of power. Jerry's asking, would you roster Matt Harvey tonight? No. That's the short answer. He doesn't have enough strikeout upside. I don't trust him as a pitcher. No. Rank the Cardinals tonight from Diffuse on YouTube. Cardinals are here. Let's flip to all of them. Obviously, the power lies mostly with Arenado, Goldschmidt, and O'Neill, but they are also the most expensive. Ultimately, I would go Arenado, O'Neill, Goldschmidt, Bader, Carlson in that order, factoring in their salary, how popular they should be, and, of course, relatively similar when it comes to the power that they have. Let's just flip to the Cardinals real quick. Right, we know what we're getting with Arenado. We know what we're getting with Goldschmidt, but of course, looking at some other hitters. So Arenado is someone I would absolutely want. You could throw in Tommy Edman in there as well, but given all their salaries and all things considered, I want exposure to just what are consistently the best hitters over the course of their careers. Randy Arozarena or Starling Marte tonight? That's a good question. I would lean with Arozarena. I think we can get that solid park factor in Boston tonight. For the Rays, I do like Nathan Eovaldi tonight. I did write about him today. I think that he does have some strikeout upside, but Arozarena is certainly a solid option. I'm not going to talk you off of stacking the A's tonight because I do think that there is some potential downside for Cal Quantrill, who's pitching for the Indians tonight, but ultimately I'd go with Arozarena. Brandon on YouTube saying, my lineup has Springer, Dickerson, Grichuk, and Simeon, along with Montas, Goldschmidt, and Seager. Kyle Seager, Corey Seager. Listen, that's a great start. I spoke about Montas today on the solo shot. I think we can make the case that Montas could be the second best pitcher on tonight's slate. If this Milwaukee-Chicago game is rained out or whatever it might be, just the concerns around not getting Corbin Burns to pitch tonight is obviously a major, major issue. So we could say that Gausman is the number one pitcher on tonight's slate because he's just the safest. He's also has, I would say, an equally bad opponent he's going up against, or an equally easy matchup because it's a bad opponent in Arizona. And Montas, we know, can go out there and rack up plenty of strikeouts. And I love the Toronto Blue Jays stack tonight. They were the first team I spoke about today. I'm fully on board. Goldschmidt has that home run upside, sure. And if it's Kyle Seager, that's fine. We know he's got some pop. And if it's Corey Seager, that's fine if you're going with a bit of a Dodgers thing as well. What games will have a lot of offense today? It wouldn't be surprised to see the Baltimore-Detroit game have a bit of a repeat as we saw last night, a 10 over-under. I think that's fine. If the Milwaukee and Chicago game plays, that game could be 10-8 in either direction because the wind blowing out, like, yes, Corbin Burns is a great pitcher. There's no question about that. But fly balls are just going to carry tonight with 18-mile-per-hour wind. Like, that's not something he can control. So allowing too many fly balls or some fly balls can just turn into home runs because it's baseball and it's weird and there's wind blowing out in Wrigley. So I would certainly say that. And then you see this game with a 10.5 total for the Boston and the Rays, Boston Red Sox and the Rays. Certainly, we could be seeing plenty of offense there. So those are the three games I would mostly turn to tonight for the most offense. Brandon saying with Arenado and Trey Turner. So that means you're going with a Cardinals-Dodgers thing. Of course, that's great on any night. I think it's specifically great tonight. Kyle Gibson, not a pitch you really need to be worried about. I didn't talk about the Dodgers at length this morning. They're just in a great spot. They have a great offense. We know what we're getting from them. And, of course, the Cardinals provide some home run upside against Will Crowe tonight. Totally on board with that. Thoughts on Alek Manoah for tonight? So Manoah is a solid pitcher. Obviously, we haven't seen the biggest sample size from him just due to the fact that it's his first year in the majors. But his strikeout stuff is real. I think it's the third highest on the slate. Kopech doesn't matter. Lopez doesn't matter. Yeah, so he's the third highest on the slate. Burns, Gausman, and Alek Manoah at 28.2%. So I'm on board with him. The issue we have is his consistency about getting deeper into games. Him getting to 6 or 7 innings is great, but 3.2 innings if he starts to get hit a little bit, and his pitch count has certainly got up there in these shorter outings. That's what he needs to control. Ultimately, I don't think the Angels are that much of a threat outside of Ohtani and Jared Walsh. Is he back for the Angels, right? Didn't he get activated off the IL? Was he still on the IL? Would be reinstated until Wednesday. So if he makes the lineup, like Jared Walsh is a good hitter, really the rest of their lineup isn't that good outside of Ohtani and whoever else it might be. So I'm totally on board with Alek Manoah tonight. And realistically, like, he shouldn't be that popular if everyone's going to be leaning towards Gausman or Montas. Like, he falls in this weird mid-tier where it's like a pivot away from those two there. Kyle saying, new to using FanGraphs, is the way to just pull up just the projected pitchers? Yeah. So every day, if you go to just FanGraphs, like if you're at the FanGraphs home page, if you go to scores, it's probable pitchers. It's right here. So under scores, it's probable pitchers. It's for the whole day's game. So like it includes the day games that we had today. And then you could sort by, anything. You look at their strikeout rate. You want to say, okay, what are they allowing in terms of home runs? You go to their batted ball profile. And they're like, okay, this pitcher is allowing a lot of fly balls, but I want to be specifically looking at, his lefty-righty split. So I then click on the pitcher and go to his splits specifically. And then you look at the game log and you can filter, okay, is he getting worse or better versus lefties or righties? But it's right under scores and probable pitchers for today's. John Brown on YouTube is asking, how would you stack the Blue Jays tonight? Any which way, every which way, anyone who I can afford. I am on board with each and every Blue Jay tonight, outside of maybe Valera at the bottom of the lineup. But Guerrero, Springer, Bichette, Simeon are the absolute top 4. I am going out of my way to get a lot of exposure to these hitters tonight. But this doesn't mean like I'm not going to be taking shares of Teoscar Hernandez or Randall Grichuk or Corey Dickerson. And Dickerson obviously makes a lot of sense in the middle of the lineup at the minimum salary. So do I want to spend up for these hitters, the large, majority of the stacks that they have them? Yes, but I understand that Corey Dickerson is necessary, especially if I'm trying to pay up for, Montas or Kevin Gausman. So if we look to like roster some of these hitters to begin with, let's Bichette in there and Springer, like we are stretching the salary pretty thin to begin with. And if you look to then roster Kevin Gausman, like you don't have a lot of salary at all. Right. So if you look to roster Montas, like you still don't have a lot of salary. So if you were to leave off George Springer and then you want to pivot down to Corey Dickerson, simply due to the salary relief, it makes lineup construction just a little bit easier. So I want to get as much exposure to the top of the Toronto lineup as I possibly can, but I understand that the hitters the lower salary hitters and deeper in the lineup are absolutely necessary tonight. Runetti Moran, I hope I'm pronouncing that right on YouTube, is saying Mets mini stack tonight. The Mets actually aren't on the main slate because they are picking up their game from yesterday. So they're not on the main slate. So just double check that depending on where you're playing. Do you think that, are you on, Jerry Winters is saying, are you on board with Philly tonight? Yes. I think Philly is a bit undervalued. I actually wrote about JT Real Muto tonight. I'm not like, where's Philly? 4.73 implied run total. Like, I'm not really worried about Price. Where's Price now? He's allowing like 1.3 something home runs per 9 this season. Obviously, he has a smaller 1.24 home runs per 9. That's overall. I think it's 1.3 or something versus righties this season. Like, I'm not overly worried about David Price. I understand that it's 1.35 versus righties. Like, I understand that the Dodgers have a good bullpen, but he's going out here giving up multiple home runs in 3 of his past 4 starts. Not appearances, 3 of his past 4 starts. So, yeah, I kind of like Philly tonight. I'm on board with that. I wrote about Real Muto as potential under-the-radar option, as a tournament option who has a bit of home run upside. Brandon on YouTube's asking, who do you think is the best option after Skubal as a pitcher? I assume you mean in the lower salary. I'm turning to Eovaldi tonight at $8,500. He's just obviously $100 cheaper. If we look to his stuff overall, 23.3% strikeout rate is good. It's not great. It's slightly below the league average. He's obviously not walking anyone, which is great. He's giving up very, very few home runs, which is great to see. Huge medium contact from him. A lot of ground balls from him, which is good. We flip to, let's bring up the teams. The Rays, let's bring up their active roster. They're striking out 3% of the time versus righties this season. Bring up their K rate. 23 or 25%, I forget what it is. Tampa Bay, 24.9. So Tampa Bay striking out a lot. Yes, they do have some serious power with a 205 ISO, a 116 WRC plus versus righties with their active roster, but they still strike out a lot. So Eovaldi, not allowing home runs, not walking hitters, and has like an okay strikeout rate, is a pitcher that I'm actually targeting tonight. So I do like him. Mike's asking, I'm sorry if I missed it, who would you pick as your best 3 RBI picks? Just any players that have RBIs. I assume you might mean this for like a betting prop or something. The best 3 options on tonight, I think Vlad Guerrero is a very, very easy choice. I think you can be looking at him. Let's just give this a refresh to see if we get some updated players for the lineups. So Vlad Guerrero would be like my number 1 choice. He was my top home run call on tonight's slate. Oh, speaking of which, the second home run call on tonight's slate is Austin Hayes for the Baltimore Orioles. So top 3 RBIs would be Vladdy, number 1. Totally going with Rafi Devers tonight too. I think that's a very easy answer as well. And then 3 would probably be someone from the Dodgers, batting in the middle of their lineup. Max Muncy. He's just one of the most consistent hitters in the league. So Guerrero, Muncy, and Rafi Devers tonight. Also, home run pick after Vlad. Yeah, it'd be Austin Hayes tonight for the Baltimore Orioles. He is confirmed in their lineup tonight, which is, of course, great to see. Nice power upside from him going up against Skubal, who's allowing over 2 home runs per 9 to righties this season. Are you still going to have minimal exposure to the Brewers? The Fuse is asking on YouTube. Obviously, this is in question due to the weather. That really comes down to what information we have beforehand. If we get an update, so there's no update from Kevin Roth yet. Once we get, something from him a little bit later, closer to lock, yes, I want exposure to the Brewers. I would lean towards having exposure to the Brewers before I have exposure to Corbin Burns. Obviously, I think, hitters, rostering a few hitters isn't as risky as taking up $11,000 of your salary for a pitcher. So that's something we, of course, need to pay attention to. So, yes, I'm still going to have some exposure to the Brewers to answer your question. Tim Vest is back with his money line question. The best bets best money lines for today. I mean, the Blue Jays at -188, obviously a heavy favorite. They are in a spot to put up a ton of runs against Dylan Bundy, who's certainly not a good pitcher. The Dodgers don't have a whole lot of juice at minus, what is it? Dodgers -136. I think that's totally fine. Detroit, I guess they could steal a game on the road against the Orioles. Like, I'm not worried about Matt Harvey or the Orioles bullpen. That game is obviously closer to a coin flip. So I would say the Blue Jays, the Dodgers are probably my two favorite. And then we could go Tigers, Red Sox, Cardinals as the next few. Yeah. Should I stay away from Wade Miley tonight? And do you like Detroit as a stack? Yes. Like Detroit as a stack as well. I think we could be seeing a similar game from Detroit and Baltimore as we saw last night. Late start, but we do see plenty of offense just because, ultimately, Scooball's not a great pitcher. As I've said, I'm fully stacking against him tonight. But, Baltimore does have strikeouts in that lineup. So I do like Detroit as a stack. I do like that as a full game stack. I think we should see plenty of scoring. And should you stay away from Wade Miley? Like, Wade Miley's not a pitcher that I love rostering just because he has a very low strikeout rate. But he also doesn't give up a whole lot of home runs. Like 0.67 home runs per 9 from him is obviously so low, and he is producing like such large quantities of medium contact that the upside against him is rather limited. What am I clicking on here? Let's go to Wade Miley splits, or I'll just look at his stuff overall because the splits ultimately don't matter. Like 59% medium contact and a 50% ground ball rate is something that he just keeps the ball down. He just deads it and, doesn't allow hitters to elevate it. So I don't love stacking against Wade Miley because there's not a whole lot of upside, I should say. So I would lean towards rostering Wade Miley instead of the Atlanta Bats, if that makes sense. Who's your favorite teams tonight? Toronto for stacking, I think, is an obvious one. I think that going to the Dodgers is also very obvious. But then we could be taking plenty of shots with Boston, St. Louis, Baltimore, Detroit. I think these teams are all fully in play. And then, yes, of course, the Brewers are the team that we want to play tonight because the home run upside for them is immense going up against Jake Arrieta. Of course, with 18-mile-per-hour wind blowing out, we'll get an update on that. Best stacking method for tonight. Tonight's probably going to be like a big 4-3-1 type of stack tonight for me. Type of stacks tonight. Like, we have some very clear offenses that we want to be targeting. And, the 3 stack, as much as I want to have plenty of exposure to Toronto could easily turn into a lot of 3 stacks for me just because they are so expensive, right? And that's where, we need a little bit of salary relief where, we could go to plenty of players on Toronto, but ultimately paying up for their home run upside is expensive if you're rostering, 3 or 4 players above $3,900. So I will also look to Toronto as great one-offs. You don't have to get full exposure to their team, but taking Guerrero or Springer as a one-off for that home run potential is absolutely a great call tonight. David Price tonight, Team Teal on Twitch is asking, Price is really not an option that I'm going to be looking to tonight. I understand that his salary is obviously very low, but even in some of these starts, like, he's not going super deep into games. Right, 5.1, 5.2 innings is obviously not great. He's also not striking out a whole lot of hitters. So, we are talking about a very, very limited upside from him, even at $6,600. Like, you would need him to get. I don't even think he gets to 6 innings tonight. Right, like I just don't see a whole lot of upside for David Price tonight. So this is a player that, Price is a player that I simply just remove from my player pool, not a spot that I'd be willing to go. Tyler Anderson at $7,400 is probably the cheapest pitcher that I will be having exposure to tonight. Really just like, I think his matchup is good, and I'm not going to Bundy, not going to Arrieta. The wind, he's just also not good this year. No Harvey, no Price, no Howard, no Will Crow. Josh Fleming, also not an option. Brandon, can you make a full lineup? No, that's not something we do here. No full lineups. It would be Toronto as the main stack. If I can afford to pay up for Kevin Gausman, that would certainly be an option, depending on who I take from Toronto. That's where Corey Dickerson comes into play. And then looking to filter in like a secondary stack like St. Louis, I think is totally a viable option. Savon on YouTube is asking, when I stack, I feel like it works sometimes, but when I check the top of the leaderboards, top players, barely stacked players, they do like a 2-2 and 4 one-offs. So yes, that's also a not viable option. You can go 3-3 and some one-offs. You can go 3-2 and some one-offs. You can go, someone brought up last week, they said they were doing a 4 stack and then 4 one-offs. That all these are viable strategies. As I said, one of the writers on numberFire, he did a study about what consistently hits. Now, like I said, it's baseball. Anything can happen on any given day. And if you hit on those, 2 or 3 players to all have home runs, then yes, you could jump to the top of leaderboards with anything. A 4-2-2 is viable. A 4-2-1-1 is viable. Like anything can work as long as you're targeting the right players for, the right home run upside and it fits within your roster construction. So I personally lean towards like 4-3-1 the most. As I've said, 4-4 is still something that I go to, but 4-3-1, 4-2-1-1, 4-2-2, these are all viable strategies when it comes to stacking. Derek on YouTube is saying, if you have 2 quality catchers like Colorado and Baltimore, is it prudent to put 2 in your lineups at the catcher first base spot and 1 in utility? So catchers generally just produce less compared to other positions. This is not something that's new. This is like tight ends in football, where tight ends on average just produce less fantasy points compared to other positions. That's just a fact. So I don't look to roster 2 catchers too often. It's more about how they would fit into stacks overall. Like if I'm looking to roster the Phillies, it'd be just, okay, let me take Real Muto because I want him. And if I also happen to be stacking the Dodgers and Will Smith fits into a stack, then yes, I will roster 2 catchers, 1 in the catcher spot, 1 in the utility, but it's not like I'm targeting 2 catchers specifically. It's more about the bigger picture. DJ on Facebook is asking, keep Brian Hayes, Ty France, or Eugenio Suarez tonight. So, Suarez tonight going up against Toku Toussaint, I think is a fine option. We do see him allowing a few home runs here and there. Ty France, like I said, Seattle, kind of a sneaky play tonight going up against Spencer Howard for Texas, obviously newly acquired from the Phillies at the trade deadline. He was allowing too many home runs this season. I know he's was a highly rated prospect for the Phillies, but too many home runs. So I would lean towards France and Suarez before Brian Hayes. I think Brian Hayes has a bright future. Like he has a very bright future in this league, just not necessarily a spot that I'm looking to go to. Adam Wainwright is a good pitcher. I said I'm not like totally on board with him tonight, especially due to his salary being a bit higher. He's only got like a 22.5% strikeout rate from Adam Wainwright, and he's $9,600. Like that's not a salary I love to pay for a pitcher that has that low. It's 22.8%. So that's not a salary that I'm like super interested in paying, but Adam Wainwright is a good pitcher and we shouldn't see too much production from Pittsburgh tonight. Couple more questions. You guys have a couple more minutes. You have time for a couple more questions. Overall, this slate, what are the key things? The weather on tonight's slate. We need an update for this Chicago-Milwaukee game just because it's great hitting weather, as Kevin Roth is saying here, great hitting weather if this game does play. We just need an update because I have a lot of interest in the stacks here. I have interest in Corbin Burns. It just matters on what we actually get an update on. Who are my top 3 pitchers on tonight's slate? Marvin on Facebook is asking, all things considered, it would be Gausman, Montas, then Burns if we're factoring in the potential weather issues with that Milwaukee-Chicago game. So Gausman is number 1, Montas would be number 2, and then Burns number 3. That is, I think, the easiest way to put it. Obviously, as we dip down into tournaments, if you're willing to differentiate your exposure, I think that's where you can take some shots with Alek Manoah. You can take some shots with Eovaldi. You could certainly mix in some shares of Tyler Anderson. All right, so that does it for today's Q&A. I think we're in a spot where we could see a lot of offense on tonight's slate. We do have some good pitchers to pay up for as well. Really should be a well-rounded slate overall. Again, this is the last show that I'll be doing. Jim Sonnens will be back tomorrow morning for the solo shot live on the FanDuel YouTube page at 9 a.m. You can follow me on Twitter at DFS_Tom. And until next time, good luck in your contests.